check this out. Talk about living in a sci-fi horror movie. Check this out. He's going to run a video and show you these, like, Orwellian gnats. These drones that look like something out of Minority Report or The Fifth Element. Check this out.
30,000 of them by 2020 in our airspace. Now, this worries airline pilots because how do we control these things? It worries the FAA. It worries all kinds of civil liberties people, right and left.
Did you see the Department of Defense video? If not, we'll show a short clip of it, where a drone flies over and drops out hundreds of little ones that land on the wire at your house and watch you?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. And they have another one called Swarm, and it's a series of drones that can keep track of large amounts of people. So they're certainly going to be used in demonstrations.
I'll tell you what, let's show a short clip of that.
Micro air vehicles, or MAVs, will play an important role in future warfare. MAVs will be integrated into future Air Force layered sensing systems. These systems may be airdropped or hand-launched, depending on the mission requirements. Multiple MAVs, each equipped with small sensors, will work together to survey a large area. Information from these sensors will be combined, providing this swarm of MAVs with a big picture point of view. Data will be communicated amongst the MAVs to enable real-time, reliable decision-making and to provide an overall surveillance picture for other platforms or operators.
Wow! Oh, man. Live, this is One for the Record. I'm Diana, and today is March 23rd, 2013. And here are your updates for today. I will be running a part of George Noory's Coast to Coast from yesterday, March 22nd. Also, yesterday's Friday Nutrimedical Report, EC, just the Earth Changes part. Alrighty then. Also, you must have just saw the drones. Isn't that a scary thing? After they roll out the little ones, they're probably going to roll out those big ones I showed you in some of my past shows about robots. Egads! It's like like Skylab. The only problem is if they're going to give those robots autonomy, where they care about themselves, as soon as they start enslaving them, or as soon as they go and they actually can get into information out of the large database of our history. Oh, I wonder what will really happen. Just like in that movie The Terminator, where the machine kind of went along with the humans that were being enslaved. Alrighty then, heads up. Huh. Alright. Here we go. The Extinction Protocol 2012 and beyond. Nightmare unfolding in Cyprus as plan hatched to seize 25% of large bank deposits. Oh, heads up, elite. I guess you're the next target. Also, spring dumps, blizzards on United Kingdom, the coldest March in 50 years. Heads up. Also, meteor lights up night sky over eastern United States, and I saw that last night around 9 p.m. I actually saw that. I looked up, I said, oh, those searchlights, what's going on? And they were all over the place. It was like something like you were looking at I don't know, it looked like something from a horror movie. Big spots just going all over the place. Wow. No, I saw that, and I had a friend with me, and she says she saw it too. So, alrighty then. Also, storm on steroids, massive tornadoes wreak havoc in Australia, 20 injured. We talked about that already. I hope they're doing alright over there. Heads up. Alrighty, moving on. Let's go into the breaking news. BreakingNews.com. There were some weather alerts. Tornado warned storm heading for St. Augustine area in Florida. Large hail likely. And that was approximately 4 hours ago. So heads up over there in St. Augustine. That's where they have the Fountain of Youth, I believe. Wow. Also, 3 hours ago, winter storm warnings and watches now stretch from Colorado to western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and western Maryland. And this is coming out of the Weather Channel. So heads up. Please be safe. Let's see if there's anything else going on over here. Alrighty then, report. Hundreds of flights delayed in Atlanta, Dallas, and Denver due to severe weather. And that's out of breaking weather. Heads up. Everybody, please be safe, be prepared. Don't go out if you don't have to. It's severe weather. And also check on the old people. And if you got to, hang out with someone, make sure they have a fireplace. Alrighty then. Moving on, and no barbecues in the house. That's not going to work. You're going to suffocate yourself. Or burn your place down. Okay, the watchers watching the world. Bright meteor streaks over eastern United States. That looked like a bunch of stuff. You'll hear it on George Noory's report. Also, previously unknown magma layer in Earth's mantle offers new insights into tectonics. And that was yesterday, so we don't need any more of that. Alright, E&E News, Fukushima, Japan. Energy News. Today, March 23rd, 16 million becquerels per liter of cesium-137 in Fukushima Daiichi spent fuel pool number 1. More than in June 2011. Almost 5,000 times Unit 4's level because it accumulates. Why don't they say that? It's accumulating now. Study. Up to 900 trillion becquerels of strontium-90 into ocean from Fukushima plant. 900 trillion becquerels of strontium-90 into ocean from Fukushima plant. Direct discharges of cooling water. Do you understand? I don't want to ever hear about carbon taxes and all kinds of crazy stuff. You fix Fukushima, because I guess you're going to be under the ground for about 24,000 years. Aren't you going to like that? Hotels under the ground for 24,000 years. I don't think you're going to like that. Wow. Japan journalist, situation at Fukushima Daiichi way worse than officially announced. Nuclear workers think Fukushima can't be settled. They have problems everywhere. Everyone knows that's true. Alright. Significant volatile fission products deposited 300 kilometers from Fukushima plant. Heads up. Your Tibby saying, Mommy, Mommy, Mama. Tibby's talking. Stop, Tibby. Must be a dog out there. You saying, Mommy, Mommy? Stop. Study. Fukushima fallout at Canadian Embassy in Tokyo was 225,000 becquerels per meter square, far in excess of limits set for radiation control zones. Also yesterday, study Fukushima radiation plume already north of Hawaii as of June 2012. Alrighty then. Let's go into U.S. Canada real quick. Hope people are getting out of the getting away from that sinkhole. At least I'm trying to warn you. Other people are probably trying to warn you. Erin Brockovich, she's trying to warn you. CNN airs troubling images of ill California sea lions, like walking skeletons. Unprecedented crisis, exponentially. Higher numbers, 700 rescued recently. You better check them for radiation poisoning. How's that one? Probably dying of cancer and all kinds of radiation poisoning. Unbelievable. Alrighty then. yesterday. Paper, very long period tremors increasing at China. Louisiana sinkhole indicates gas and liquid moving underground. Please, if you know anyone there, just say, just come, call people you know that's down there and tell them to come visit you till this is over. This is terrible. Alrighty then, they gotta get out of there. Everyone really needs to get out of there. Alrighty then. It is one day down to the weekend. You still got tomorrow, Palm Sunday. Tomorrow is Palm Sunday. Heads up. Alrighty then. Take care, be safe, and have a blessed evening. And tomorrow too. You'll see me tomorrow. On the flip side, I got your backs. Stay tuned. This is some real interesting information coming out. Alrighty then. See you on the flip side. Take care. Here's a little bit of George Noory from yesterday. From Friday the 22nd, 2013. Here we go.
From the City of Angels off the Pacific Ocean, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm George Noory, and welcome to Coast AM. Later tonight, those open lines and the Rage Hotline. Here's what's happening. All around this country, there are 149 small airports. And due to budget restraints, the FAA is going to close 149 air traffic towers. The Federal Aviation Administration announcing it will close those air traffic control towers in a move that one maker says was akin to removing stoplights and stop signs from our roads. Now, the reason they're doing this, of course, is the sequester. They're having budget problems. But these airports apparently are not going to close down. What the FAA is recommending. Now, keep in mind, air traffic towers are important because they land planes and they allow planes to take off. There's a communication there. Well, what will happen at these small airports now, the pilots themselves will communicate with each other on takeoff and landings. Now, the FAA says, hey, they know how to do this. It's procedure. I'm not sure I'd want to fly out of those little airports. A few years ago, a story was reported about a gigantic, devastating series of earthquakes that will happen more frequently at the San Andreas Fault than previously thought. Geologists from the University of California, Irvine, and the Arizona State University concluded that the largest quake strikes will hit the San Andreas every 45 to 144 years. Now, the last big one was 1857. That's over 150 years ago. So we're overdue. While it's possible the fault is experiencing a natural lull, the scientists think it's more likely that a major quake could happen soon. One expert on quakes who monitors these kinds of stories, Stan Dale. Stan, are we due for the big one?
Yes, George, I think so. In fact, it's getting close. There's some very unusual activity across the planet, and particularly along the West Coast. For the last 8 days, I've been monitoring Los Angeles and San Francisco signals, the electrical and thermal signals that the earthquake is building. And something big appears to be building. And to kind of underscore that, I looked at the average number of earthquakes of any value in California for the last 10 days. And in the last 2 days, that average has dropped 40%.
That's huge.
Pressure is building somewhere. And I can see it. It's centered, I hate to tell you this, but kind of around where Los Angeles is. Between there and San Diego, it seems to be the biggest pressure buildup. But you guys there in California aren't the only ones that are seeing something strange. Down in Central America, in southern Mexico, in Panama, in Ecuador, Colombia, all those areas down there for the past 10 days at least, I've been seeing extraordinary pressure buildup along the fault line or of the tectonic plate there. It may be about to split and form a new section to the plate there.
Now, Stan, when you see this kind of pressure, when you see this kind of movement, generally, When does a big earthquake occur?
Well, the window is 1 to 7 days, but the big ones usually go 7 to 10 days before.
Jeez, so we're talking within a couple weeks then.
Well, right now you're talking within about 3 or 4 days.
Can you be wrong?
Yep. I put that out there. I can be wrong. 10 to 15% of the time, I don't get it right. So I'm just telling you, get this. One of my data sources, their computer absolutely is gone tropo over in Europe, and 1/3 of my data set I can't get to, which is a very important set for California. So I can't be positive on the signal I'm seeing right now that how big it is, or how likely it is to convert. But there's other things happening. I mean, there's a 2 million square mile area up from Newfoundland, the Gulf of St. Lawrence, up to Iceland. A 2 million square mile area that suddenly rapidly dropped temperature in the sea 2 days ago. And it still dropped, and I'm hoping it'll warm up a bit, but at the same time, there was a temperature drop on the other side of the planet underneath Tasmania.
Now, what does that tell you?
There's something going on in the core of this planet. So those pressure zones in Central America I was telling you about, the antipodal point, or the opposite point of the planet, is underneath the tip of India, and I put it on my website, a warning on the 14th of March. Something extremely weird is happening inside the planet, because that area is rapidly heating in 5 hot spots, while over exactly opposite that, pressure is building up on the plates to form seismic eruptions and volcanoes all the way down to Ecuador.
You can trace Stan's work, by the way, at StanDeyo.com. Stan, let's stay in touch with each other.
You bet.
Okay, my friend. I have a feeling you may be right on this one. Whoa. Let's hope not. But like he said, he's got 85% certainty accuracy. The space rock that hit Earth 65 million years ago and is widely implicated in the end of the dinosaurs was probably a speeding comet, according to scientists. For years, we all talked about an asteroid, perhaps 5-6 miles long. They are saying because of the speed that they were able to predict, they're pretty sure this was a comet that hit us, not an asteroid. Now, for this smaller space rock to have produced a 180-kilometer wide crater, it must have been traveling relatively quickly, and that's where, again, they think it was a comet. And this, of course, is right out there in the Gulf of Mexico. A sonic boom of some sort caused windows and walls to shake over several counties in northern central Florida Thursday night. County sheriff's officials say that they think maybe it was the military maneuvering of some kind. Nobody knows for sure. Next Thursday, our investigative reporter Linda Moulton Howe will cover part of these stories, these large booms that people are hearing all over the place. Scientists in Italy are working on genetically modified foods. Oh no, this time a new apple for people who are allergic to apples. So you can look for that to pop out pretty soon. Salad labeled as ready to eat, they say, is more dangerous than beef burgers, according to Britain's top food experts, following a rash of infections linked to the product. Certain types of bacteria found in the pre-cut salad bags can almost be impossible to kill. Now, they say that you have to irradiate the leaves, but the public is opposed to that. So this infection, they said, in England, for example, affected 300 people just from these salads. A former chef who killed his wife and cooked her body for 4 days to dispose of her remains, sentenced to only 15 years life in prison. That's it. He had argued with his wife. He bound her mouth, hands and feet with duct tape because he didn't want her to go out while she was intoxicated. He gets 15 years for this after he cooked her body for 4 years. I don't get it. We're going to talk about rage, by the way, when we have open lines. We're going to have a special hotline for you for that. The nationwide shortage of ammunition has left many police departments around the country scrambling to get their hands on the necessary rounds, with some even bartering with other departments. In Wilton, Maine, state officials there seized 75 dogs and puppies, 24 birds, including 3 chickens, at a mobile home after finding some of them sick and obviously in unsanitary conditions. The home of Nancy Champagne, searched by state animal welfare agents, back in March, about a week ago, after a complaint was filed and officials got a search warrant and they went in and found all those animals there. Now, we're still getting reports of a lot of strange things in the skies. Maybe a meteor shower, who knows what. Let's check in with Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center. Peter, what are people seeing these days?
Good evening, George, and thanks again for the invitation to appear tonight. I don't know what people are seeing, but during my last appearances, I've reported that there's been a serious reduction in the number of reports to our center anyway. I believe it's the same to MUFON. And when I got home about 45 minutes ago from a friend's birthday celebration, I was hoping that I'd be able to report the same thing tonight because that reduces my workload. But my anticipation was wrong. I came back to a flurry of phone calls on the hotline from North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Long Island, New York, Staten Island, New York, Connecticut, Virginia, Maryland, New Hampshire, and again, Connecticut, a second call. So I haven't talked with these people yet, George, but most of them sounded like very serious-minded people submitting serious reports about something that truly alarmed them tonight. If any of our listeners in those areas or on the East Coast generally have seen anything tonight, I would welcome written reports from them submitted via our online report forum at UFOcenter.com. So don't know what's going on. Recently, we've had, even though there's been a reduction in the number of reports, the reports of red, orange, and yellow fireballs are continuing.
Yes, they sure are. Everywhere.
Had a recent report a very dramatic report from Coral Gables, Florida. The guy is an A&P mechanic, as I recall. He knows which end of the airplane is supposed to go forward, so he's probably a very good witness. He said he was shocked to see 4 blood-red, bright fireballs larger than a planet move across the sky in a leisurely fashion and then suddenly disappear from sight. A similar report from Bellingham, very similar to the sightings from Ocala, Florida, which you invited me to comment last week. I never got to that comment, but we're getting a lot of very strange reports of these fireballs, and I urge the coast-to-coast listeners, if they see one of these displays, to write down all of the details and please submit a report. So we're still getting reports, and I wish I understood what these things are, George, but I don't. They intrigue me, and I hope someday there's a resolution to our question about the UFO phenomenon.
Sooner than later, Peter. Thank you so much. Peter Davenport from the UFO Center, National UFO Reporting Center, his website, UFOcenter.com. He's one of the foremost writers of mysteries, UFOs, the strange, the unusual, Lee Spiegel. He joins us next on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Noory. Lee Spiegel with us, of course, writer, reporter, media personality. He has spent almost his entire life presenting the world of unexplained phenomena and the paranormal to you. Also writes now for the Huffington Post. Lee, always a pleasure. How are you?
Well, it's the great and powerful George. I'm good. How are you doing?
Sound like the Wizard of Oz.
You know, I've been meaning to ask you, have you completely cleaned off all the doomsday dust from your clothes yet since December?
Not entirely, but mostly. Hey, speaking of strange things, the Huffington Post, I was getting emails from people today. Are you folks soliciting stories on people who have had encounters with extraterrestrials?
I'm not sure how much of that is true. I heard something like that. One of the other divisions was...
How many blog
what I think is going on is they may be looking for stories about like children and people who've had like close encounters of the fourth kind, possible abductions.
Yes.
It hasn't been made completely clear to me, but I'm going to find out about that because it should come through my desk once they finalize something like that.
That's right. What's new with you these days?
Well, you know, I was actually just happy to hear Peter Davenport. You know, I did a story last week about, I thought it would be interesting to let people know almost where they could go to see a UFO and how to plan that kind of an event or a trip. And I basically put together
a who's who of databases that people should be looking at, and the first database in my story was Peter's National UFO Reporting Center. I think that if rather than people just trying to haphazardly look into the sky and wonder if they're going to see something tonight, they could actually almost make a date with possible UFO experience by looking at patterns that have been accumulated over decades by people like Peter in their databases to find out what areas of the country, what cities, what localities have had not just occasionally UFO encounters, but there are places that have sightings 2 and 3 days in a row.
No, you're absolutely right. And Peter, as you know, Lee, is a no-nonsense guy. And
That's right.
He gets right to it.
And he's been doing this for a long time, and he's very serious. And in fact, on his website, the site doesn't make any claims to validate the information and the reports that people make, and he does everything he can to omit and eliminate obvious hoaxes, which is a huge problem these days.
So in terms of the stories you've uncovered, and you've done some great
Tell us about what's going on with the Earth changes. We have Sinkhole City. All over the planet there are sinkholes. We have a CME that happened last week. It hit the Earth. It hit the Earth on the opposite side of the Earth, but it did have some effects. According to Professor McKinney, who I'm going to try to get back on the program in the next week or so, this is the year when we're going to see something catastrophic. And as I say, if I look at my short list, that's why I tell people, prep up like crazy, get your nutraceuticals, get your Nutridyne, etc. Be ready, because this is the year when the proverbial is going to hit the fan. This is not a joke. This is a 5-alarm fire, and I'm telling people my spidey sense is going crazy that something's going to happen here shortly. We have an economic meltdown. We've got geothermal changes occurring all over the planet, including the release of permafrost and methane hydrates in the north. Now, the report you sent me today, I couldn't believe it when you sent it to me. Oh my God, can't be true. So tell us what it is. What are the Japanese up to now, besides the insane so-called, chewing gum and baling wire solution they had to Fukushima Daiichi and their power plant problems? What's the latest stupid thing that they're up to?
They are doing a scale model of turning methane class rates into natural gas and using that as a fuel. And they're calling it a green fuel. Of course, it isn't green. And we've discussed methane hydrates before when BP and the Macondo well blew up, the borehole blew up, because the methane class rates are stored in caverns all over the Earth. And in fact, just today, the Office of Conservation of the state of Louisiana has issued a alert status to code 3. They have a big sinkhole down there, and the problem is that they have methane in the aquifer, and the methane is linking into the sinkhole. And what they've been doing is they've been drilling wells, and then they flare off the methane. Well, apparently this is only they now have seismic monitoring that has detected elevated subsurface activity in the area, and they think they have fluid and gas movement inside the sinkhole. And so they've cut off all work there. Now, if that methane is coming from the methane class rate cavern, and it's very likely that it is because of the explosion that occurred when the Macondo well blew, and the other, they opened up a migration channel into that methane class rate cavern, and if that, they're getting ready for an explosion down there. They have stopped all work.
By the way, those channels, and I've followed the geology, the ones in Louisiana follow a fault line system that goes all the way from Macondo all the way to the Madrid fault system that has over 25 sites with sometimes more than one reactor, very much like the Fukushima Daiichi reactor Mark 1s, etc., all sitting on that fault line there within strike zone of a major superquake, the largest earthquake literally in the Western world, in the Northern Hemisphere, was in the 1811 and on the New Madrid system. People need to understand a 9+ earthquake there is going to make all of those nuclear reactors make Fukushima look like a children's garden party. It's going to make the southwestern United States considerably, by orders of magnitude, much more radioactive.
Well, and those fissures opening up, they know that that's happening into that cavern, into the methane class rate cavern, because they've got bubbling, they've got methane gas in the aquifer, and that aquifer goes all the way from northwestern Mississippi to southeastern Louisiana. It's a huge aquifer, and they have methane gas in there at such levels that it could explode. The aquifer could explode.
Here's my theory about what caused the death of the dinosaurs, and it's different than what you'll hear typically, but it's an amalgamation based on what I've seen from many different researchers. I believe that the asteroid or comet that struck off the Yucatan may not have been as big as we thought, but it was big enough to cause a massive release of methane hydrates. How thick do you think the methane hydrates are in the Gulf of Mexico, varying from the least thick to the thickest area? It's from 1/2 mile to 2.5 miles thick. And the volume is over 640 volumes at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, which can be 1.5 miles down, to the surface volume of methane. And methane, by the way, is 16 times more of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So my guess is what happened is we ended up with a thing called these Carolina Bays. Have you heard of those before? The Carolina Bays, we talked about this with Robert Felix, were explosions in the upper atmosphere that caused massive, if you want to call it, holes in the surface of the Earth, look like explosions, nuclear explosions. They're similar to fuel air bombs, and they have an explosive power equivalent to nuclear bombs. Some of them would be big enough to be considerably bigger than even our larger nuclear bombs. They occurred by thousands all over the Earth. And it's my guess what happened is we had a massive release of methane hydrates that occurred with this giant comet that struck the Earth at the time of the dinosaurs. The methane class rates were released and caused air explosions, fuel air bomb explosions in the atmosphere, rained down carbon in a layer, and buckyballs, which we could actually see along a line at the time, and also robbed the atmosphere of oxygen. In fact, if you just burn off the tar pits in Venezuela only, in terms of number of teramoles of oil there, you drop the oxygen concentration of the planet to 0. So the dinosaurs were living in a place with 2 atmospheres of pressure at sea level with oxygen at 30 to 40%. And when the oxygen dropped to 5%, the dinosaurs and these other larger animals, larger than 25 pounds, all died, because when you have a larger animal, they can't exist in that low in oxygen concentration, but smaller animals might. And that's what happened. And that period of time, by the way, took over 100,000 years for it to repair itself. So that's my theory about what happened. It was a combination of methane hydrate surges occurred after a big impact from a comet that struck the Yucatan, but it wasn't just there. The effects of release of methane hydrates are occurring everywhere. They're off the coast of California now. They're in the north of Arctic. They're everywhere on the planet. We're seeing methane hydrates are already being released and bubbling up from the ocean floor and under the ground. And I think the methane hydrates are directly tied to these issues that happen, including these sinkholes. There's a linkage there. They're also linked to these fault lines, because whenever you're drilling down in these areas, you trigger off earthquakes and you trigger off methane release. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and those scenarios do not take into account the fact that Japan is deliberately releasing the methane class rates. In other words,
which is going to, by the way, trigger off earthquakes, because you have to think of it. When you take the Aceh, Indonesia, I heard this from an oil engineer who actually did some research stuff on what happened on the Macondo drill site, which means the devil's food, and he said when they take a specific gravity of oil and gas out of the giant oil fields in Indonesia, and they pump in, these large companies like ExxonMobil pump in water of a different specific gravity, they change the geotectonics and the forces that are involved, and that's why when the ocean floor moved equivalent of 4,000 or 5,000 feet in a matter of seconds, this is what causes the tsunami to occur there. The tsunami occurred because a giant, if you want to call it like a piston, moved in the ocean floor because of the change in geotectonics of the seafloor. And when the Japanese are doing this kind of thing, playing around with methane hydrates, they're actually risking an even bigger earthquake than the upthrust one that occurred off Sendai, Japan. I think it's craziness, especially when we know that ringing the Earth with a large electromagnetic pulse from a coronal mass ejection, like the Carrington event, is almost certainly likely to happen again. And it turns out that CMEs ring the Earth like a bell, and if there's stored energy in the rocks that'll cause a big earthquake or volcanism, it's going to release it. And so you can expect superquakes and super earthquakes and volcanoes to occur, especially if they're near your equinoxes, planetary alignments, perigee or syzygy, these various different alignments that can actually increase gravitonic forces and increase the energy, or if they're the right energy spectral frequency pattern to trigger certain earthquake fault lines to release their energy. I think this year is going to be a nasty year. I really think that between this year and next, with the solar activity going on, with these comets being pushed in by an object in the Oort cloud, which is almost certainly a red or brown dwarf star that Professor McConney's been talking about for years. This is the year of the comet, and I think combined with stupid moves by the Japanese to drill, or the fact that they're not talking about the fact that the Macondo drill site is still leaking out gas and other material they're using, Corexit 9500, still at the ocean floor to try to hide it. They're still doing that, and they're telling you, go and eat the seafood, it's perfectly fine. Because you can't see it. Nasty, eh?
Nasty.
Nasty, nasty, nasty. It's amazing, isn't it? Closing comments, anybody?
Pray hard. Pray really hard.
Yeah, this year we're facing I call the devil's set of cards this year, and people need to realize if you don't rely on the Most High God, if you don't prep, if you don't pray, you're going to be surprised by how shocking things can become. Just look what happened in Cyprus. If you don't think they can freeze your bank accounts or squeeze them, if you don't think that we can have an airborne plague, if you don't think that we can have a release of radiation like we missed a bullet a few days ago from Japan, think again and prep.